Hello everyone, my name is Adrien, and today I'm going to take you on a journey through the ERC world. There are many ERCs. This is from last week. I'm sure more have been merged since then. So last week we could count 520 ERCs, actually 519. There is one EIP in the middle that we'll discuss later. And you see that there is a dependency between different ERCs. So it's like a growing world and living world. Some are finalized, some are still draft, and everything in between. And some have even been withdrawn because authors realize that they were no longer relevant, or some are just stagnant because authors don't abandon them, basically. And so I wanted to explore the life cycle of this ERC, not just in terms of what is described in EIP1, in terms of like, oh, you have to be a draft and review and so on, but more in terms of how useful they are and what their evolution. For your ERC needs, like most of them, or most of the important ones, I'd say, are implemented in OpenZeppelin. We are currently having a release candidate, so if you want to implement on both of one ERC, you could check here. Or if you're an ERC author, maybe you also want to contribute to having your standard be provided, have a standard implementation in OpenZeppelin contract. So this is a tier list I'm going to try to do today. Those are my different sections. From the bottom all the way up, we have that's not even an ERC. So, I mean, that's the lowest effort someone could make, in my opinion, is not even going through EIP1 and trying to standardize something and not doing it properly. So if you're trying to build something standard and reusable, please at least make it an ERC. At least it would put you in the useless category, which is way higher. Above the not even an ERC, we have in retrospect, it was a bad idea. You never start here, you just try to do something useful. And a few years or months later, we realize it was a bad idea. It's okay. Sometimes you harm the ecosystem by doing so, but ideally, like this would be avoided if more people that are currently not involved in the process were involved and were providing reviews. So if you want to avoid someone doing a bad ERC, you should jump in and provide reviews before it's too late. There is not even the authors understand it. I'm not saying the authors are stupid. I'm just saying they are trying to do something very smart, sometimes too smart, sometimes nobody understands it, sometimes there are corner cases. And if there are corner cases that are not fully specified, different implementation will handle them differently. And then we have bugs and we have stuff that is non-standard, which is what we wanted to avoid in the first place. Then there are the useless ERCs. They are not bad, they are not good, they are not harming anybody, they are just here, and most of them are useless. Then you have the actually useful ERCs, and we are getting into the good ERCs. The actually useful ERCs are the ones that people deploy and people use, and that improves the ecosystem for everyone. So if you write an ERC and it ends up being useful, good job, and thank you for your work. And above that, you have the ecosystem shaping. So here, like, you are in the ERC that are so great that basically they define how the ecosystem will work, they define how the interaction will work, and they are shaping the next generation of contracts. So again, great work if you manage here. And I reserved a God tier section just in case, because some might be like really nice, and we'll see if any ERC make it to this tier. So all views are my own. They do not reflect any of official OpenZeppelin point of view. If you're mentioned and you're unhappy, we can discuss afterward. Please don't be mad and please have some sense of humor. I'm going to say nasty thing about ERCs, including one I personally wrote. So let's start on the first one. This is one I really like. Personally, it's a payable token. It's been just authored by one person. It's an evolution of ERC20 that allows callbacks, and that, in my opinion, can be quite useful. It's not that widely used, but it has some usage. I'd put it in actually useful, even though like there is a very specific corner case that is underspecified. To me, it's useful. And it's an evolution of ERC20, so we have to discuss ERC20. A lot of people hate ERC20, a lot of people love it. It has bad design features. If we were to do it today, we would do it very differently. Nevertheless, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for ERC20. It enabled DeFi, it enabled Uniswap, Aave, and so on. It definitely shaped our ecosystem, and in that regard, it's an ERC that made things better, I think, in this ecosystem. 1363 also mentioned ERC165. ERC165 is, when you looked at the graph before earlier, it was the one ERC that was the most required and most mentioned. So basically, most ERC require some form of 165 compliance. But the thing is that even though like most of people that deployed contract deployed 165, I don't know anybody that actually uses it and that actually looks at the interface for checking stuff. So it's useful. So it's useless, yeah. It's completely and utterly useless, but it doesn't harm anyone. You have other token standards that try to improve on ERC20, like you have ERC 777 that tried to be smarter with hooks, and you had to register in 1820. And if you have time, I will explain to you how I lost Bitcoin because of that. It was testnet Bitcoin, but in retrospect, it was a bad idea. That's probably one of the only contracts that OpenZeppelin decided to remove from its library for security reasons. Another token that you may know about is 721. I think it's really nice. Again, like maybe people will say like it could be improved on, but it has fewer flows than ERC20, and it created a large section of our ecosystem. Maybe one section that we sometimes don't like. Maybe we don't like all the NFT drops that happen, but it's still ecosystem shaping for us, better or worse. Another token that is quite used and quite well known, that's basically bridging the gap between ERC20 and 721 is 1155. It's quite nice, but it doesn't have that much usage. Wallets don't support it well, so I'll put it in the useful category for now. Maybe in the future it can become ecosystem shaping, but I don't think it's there yet. You have 223. I don't know if you know this one. This one I particularly hate. It doesn't require ERC20, but it implements the exact same interface. So the function selector do clash, but they have different behaviors. And it doesn't include 165, so you don't know how to, you don't have any way to make a difference between a 223 and a 20, and they would behave differently. Hopefully, like, there are not that many 223 tokens anymore, but this is like, in retrospective, was a bad idea. We also have 677. You will see that the screenshot's a bit different here. And the reason why it's a bit different is because it's not present on the ERC website, because it's not an ERC. People just wrote the document, put it in a PR on the ERC. Back then it was the EIP repo. It was never merged, so it's not an ERC. Sorry. So like some people hate ERC20, but overall like it's better than most of the things that came after it and tried to improve on it. That's also why I put it that high. But there are good extensions to ERC20. We have the ERC20 permit extension, which you may have used. That was quite useful. Now we have a smart account with 227, so we don't really need permits anymore, but they're here to stay, and they're actually quite useful. We also have the 712 type of signature. So this is an EIP, which I think should be an ERC. Back then, ERC and BIP were a bit fluid. We did not, the naming convention was not clear, but this is definitely not an EIP because it doesn't affect the node or the protocol. It's just a convention between wallet and contract. So it should definitely be an ERC. So it's the only EIP that I will put in this list. And this EIP or ERC basically defines how we do signature in a way that is human readable. It's way better than the 191 signature where you had like an abstract hash. And people have tried to improve on that, and nobody ever succeeded improving on that. And so far, it's what we all sign. And it applies to everything. It applies to token, to DeFi, to governance with votings, to smart account. Like the 4337 entry point uses that for preparing the hashes of the user operation. To me, it's an EIP that is used everywhere, or an ERC that is used everywhere in the space, that improves security for everyone, and that we've never been able to replace with something better. So this is going to be our first God tier ERC, and probably the only one today. There is also 1271. So 1271 is, we're in the signature scheme world here, we just saw permit. 1271 is a way you integrate smart accounts into the world of signature verification. Otherwise, like, you just do an EC recover, but if you have a smart account with a multisig or some sort, like, it doesn't work that way. So this is really something that is extremely useful, and that, in my opinion, is ecosystem shaping. People are trying to, I mean, we are trying to build on top of that and extend it, but it's not replacing it, it's extending it. What it does today, it does well, and we don't want to break that. And then there is 4237. So this is an ERC that you may know of. It's probably the first one that is non-final that we are seeing in this list. If you don't know about it, you should definitely learn about it, because I think it's really important. It's non-final, it's still moving. We went from version 07 to 08 of the entry point recently. So it's still not finalized. I think it will still go up. But right now, it's already ecosystem shaping in the sense that it basically defined, in my opinion, how you do decentralized user operation reading for smart accounts. And once it's final and when it's more adopted with better support through 7702 and so on, it's possibly our next candidate for God tier. But with 4337 comes 7562 that you may or may not know about, and this one is horrible in the sense that 4337 requires some storage restriction on the account verification side, which makes sense. Like, you understand why this ERC exists. But if you've ever read it, maybe you needed a good glass of water and some medicines after, because it's really, really hard to read. I'm sure, like, whenever you read it, you're missing part of the stuff because it's so complex. And I'll put it in not even the author understands. I'm not sure any single person on Earth is able to give all the specification that is in the ERC without having to look at the document. There is also, like, talking about smart account, we mentioned 4237 and 1271. There are a few ERCs that are trying to do modular smart account, and some of them I like, some of them I don't really like. There is 6900. I don't remember who, but there is a project that uses that, possibly in production. It's horrible. I mean, I'm sorry if you are not aware of it, but it's so complex. There are so many moving pieces. It's so easy to mess things up. There are so many corner cases that are not properly documented. Like, try to do something that is really, really useful, but they do it in a way that is basically unreadable. And I'm worried that many implementation will not be consistent with one another because of this complexity, which makes me put it in the not even the author understands it. Now, maybe in 2 years we have the same talk and I revisit things and I say, oh, it's ecosystem shaping because all of a sudden everybody uses it and we all have modular smart accounts. But so far, I think it's more complex than useful. There is 2771 still in the realm of smart accounts. We have, like, the meta transaction native stuff that we built during COVID. This, September 2020. We were in lockdown while we wrote this one. MetaMask, myself, Ron, and many people. Like, it was nice. It enables generic meta transactions through forwarder, and that's why we have the context contract under OpenZeppelin that so many people dislike. It used to be very useful. I don't think it's quite useful anymore. I mean, it's useful in some contexts, like 75, 79 uses it somehow, so maybe it will have usage in the future, but if we do the same talk in 2 years, I'm pretty sure it will drop down to useless by then, because account abstraction just took over everything. Talking about useless ERC, this is one we wrote at OpenZeppelin about standardizing custom errors in smart contracts. But the thing is, like, contracts are already deployed, are not going to update to produce new custom errors, and I'm not sure anybody verifies and reads custom errors anyway, besides during testing. Like, when a custom error is triggered in production on mainnet, I'm not sure anybody cares about being able to decode it. So we try to do something. I think it's probably one of the most useless things we've ever done, and standardizing custom error, in my opinion, is really useless. Unless it's done by Uniswap and it's like a way to wrap stuff and build proper traces, in which case I think you could do something related to custom error that is quite useful. Maybe not fully useful yet, but probably useful at some point in the future. So that's when Uniswap takes over. It's a bit better than when we do it alone. I mean, other stuff that I was involved in, like, it was old. I was working on oracles with my previous company. We tried to standardize some stuff. It was withdrawn, so this is going to be useless, but at least the author recognized it and they're not polluting the stuff with the place with final ERC that we don't need. It was withdrawn, which is the correct thing to do when you know you have a useless ERC. Okay, then the daemon proxies. So you may know the daemon proxies pattern. So this ERC doesn't standardize the construction of a daemon proxies. Daemon proxies existed before that with 1538 that has been withdrawn. And you can build a daemon proxy without following that ERC. What this ERC standardizes is not the idea of a proxy delegating to different implementation depending on the function selector. What this ERC standardizes is the interface through which you are going to look up and to introspect the configuration of your contract or update it. And until a few weeks ago, I thought it was the most useless ERC because I thought nobody used it. The naming made no sense. The function made no sense in the way they were written. It was overly complex in my opinion. And it could be done way simpler. But then I realized that all of a sudden Etherscan decided to consider it, look at it, and right now, if you have a daemon proxy on mainnet that exposes the correct facets and loops as specified in 2535. Now you can explore the configuration of your daemon proxy through EtherScan. So it's somehow useful. Maybe not fully useful, but somehow useful. So good job on EtherScan, basically turning this useless ERC into a somehow useful ERC. Which means that whether an ERC is useful or not is not just a matter of who writes it, it's also a matter of the ecosystem accepting it and using it and agreeing on its value. The author is not in full control of it. There is 7201 that I wanted to mention again, another ERC I've been involved with. We did it because we think it's good to have namespace storage. It's useful in the context of daemon proxies, for example. We think it's useful in general in the context of upgradability. And this one in particular was also written with Verkle trees in mind, even though like Verkle trees might be deprecated in favor of binary trees. I think we'll still get the same extension mechanism, so it still somehow makes sense. And I wasn't expecting that many people to adopt it, but it feels like a lot of people are using the formula we standardized here. So maybe it's one of my first useful ERC. I'm happy with that. Okay, so those are all the ERCs I wanted to rank today. As you saw, there are many, many, many others. I'm sorry, I cannot rank all your favorite ERCs. But what I want to ask you today is, yeah, this process is only as good as the people that are involved in it. And the more people are involved, the better for everyone. So if you are building something that could be standard, write an ERC. And don't stop at just creating the pull request. Try to have it merged, please. If you are not building anything standard, but you worry about standardization, review ERCs, review other people's ERCs, give feedback, try to improve them. We have the ISMagician forum for that. All the lifecycle of ERCs is documented in the IP1. Every one of us should worry about that, should take some responsibility in being part of that process. So that's what I want to encourage you to do today. And these are the obvious links if you want to know more about how we deal with ERCs and how we implement them. So now we have a few minutes for question. We can discuss anything ERC related, and I could rank any ERC you want me to rank as long as I know it.
Thank you. Is it half of Space Invaders?
That was not the idea, okay. No. But maybe it is. Not on purpose.
Hello, could you talk about RIPs and other IPs that are maybe being developed, but RIPs?
Well, I mean, yeah, the space is split between EIPs, or ERCs, RIPs for cross-chain things. There is also CAPES, cross-chain agnostic, cross-chain improvement proposals. So there are different spaces. The EIP process is very specific because it's for Ethereum nodes and protocols. As far as ERCs versus RIPs versus CAPES. I mean, RIPs are kind of strange because they mix both EIPs and ERCs because I don't remember the name, but the one for the P256 precompile is an RIP, so it lives on the EIP side of this space, not on the ERC side. So yeah, sometimes if your standard involves more chains besides just Ethereum, if it's L2 related, or if it's general interoperability related, it may be a good place to put it in RIPs or CAPES. But yeah, otherwise, I think it's mostly the same process, and I think they mostly follow EIP ones. It's kind of random that there are no RIPs here, but they could very well have been. We could take an RIP and sort it with this. It would make sense. Nobody has a nice ERCs they like that they want to rank.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. Do you have an opinion about the EIP 4626, the interest-bearing token standard?
Yeah, it was one that I removed because I thought I did not have enough time to discuss everything. So honestly, I like the approach. I like where they are going. I think it has the potential to be useful. There are a few things that I don't like with it. One of them is that there is no slippage protection included in 4626. So if you wanted to do slippage protection, you either need to have a router, which means more token movement and more gas spent, or you want to expand 4626 with slippage function, which I tried to propose. I think it was 5143. Nobody cared about that. There are also like efforts to make it asynchronous, like 7540, which so yeah, it's a bit of a complex word. I like the concept of 4626. I'm not sure how useful it is today. Like if I had to rank it, it would be somewhere between actually useful and in the middle between useless and useful. It's at least useless and probably somehow useful. It's just that I don't, maybe it exists, but I don't know any like UI that allows you to explore many liquidity system and that leverage 4626 to unify all of that. If that kind of things existed, then it would bump up the utility of 4626 by a lot, possibly at some point making it ecosystem shaping.
Thank you very much.